Hi, I'm Katharina Englert, and welcome to the You Got This podcast, the podcast where we dive into career and leadership inspiration for women who are ready to take charge and lead with ease, confidence, and fun. In each episode, we explore strategies and stories designed to help you break through barriers, embrace your authentic self, and create the career you deserve. Whether it's through solo episodes packed with actionable insights or conversations with inspiring experts, this podcast is all about helping you to step up, to be seen, and to lead with impact. So, if you're ready to learn more about how to rise and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. Let's get started. You got this! Welcome, Alexis, to my podcast. For those of you who do not know Alexis yet, Alexis is an international senior executive with, I think, 20 years of experience dedicated to business and climate issues. You are focused on developing strategy, innovation, sustainable product and services for business growth and business development. You are a passionate advocate for climate tech, particularly in energy transition and industrial decarbonization. And you have always leveraged your work to scale emerging technologies. You have spent your career across both B2C and B2B, first leading Adidas, that's where we met and worked together, as a brand sustainability program as a director for business strategy and business development. And later, you have been working as the founding chief sustainable officer at Arcadis, a global design, engineering, and infrastructure firm. As I understand, Alexis, you're also a member of the EU Women's Climate Leadership Network at the European Investment Bank and a global fellow at the League of Entrepreneurs. Welcome to the podcast, Alexis.
So nice to be speaking with you again.
If you want to read more about Alexis, I put in the show notes the link to the webpage where you can find all of the information. Alexis, your CV looks impressive. Do you want to tell me a bit about your story, your achievements? What is it really what you're doing?
Yeah, well, thank you actually for inviting me. It's great to actually talk with you again. We worked quite closely together when I was back at Adidas. I guess I probably never told you sort of my story, how I got to be doing what I was doing, and certainly we haven't talked much about where I've been going from there. So I'll try and do it quick. I actually started my career in international development. This was after going to school in DC and working with a lot of those development banks. And, I come from a medical family, so it was sort of expected that you'll find a profession that, helps the world. You just got to figure out which one it is. So I thought it was going to be international development. And after working in DC for a while, it seemed like actually none of the money was leaving DC, and I couldn't figure out who was doing the right work. So I wound up going to work for 2.5 years in rural northern Nicaragua.
Wow.
And yeah, one of the things that I realized, much to my surprise out there, is that there's many organizations doing really great work. That being said, a lot of the problems we were working on were caused by totally legal consensual decisions made between companies, governments, and locals in the past, but then they had these consequences downstream. And that wasn't planned in from the business plan in the beginning, from the strategy. And that's actually what turned me back towards saying, well, then I would like to work with those companies to actually build it in at the front end, at the strategy stage, at the business and product stage, and then that'll carry through so we don't have these consequences down the line.
Mm-hmm.
That was what brought me back to get my MBA at Michigan and a Master of Science. So I did a rather odd combination of sustainability and business back then. Not so many people were bringing those two things together. And then, and actually, I wound up coming to Adidas after graduating because I don't know if you remember, London was going to be the first sustainable Olympic Games.
Of course, I remember this one. It was not that easy.
And so Adidas has a long and really actually treasured history of some really good compliance work and labor topics in its supply chain, but there really wasn't anything when it came to sustainable product or materials or innovations, and we needed this ahead of the Olympic Games. So I came on for what I thought was going to be, 2 to 3 years work in the Olympics area. And then, sure enough, as we built out the brand program, there were new needs. There was like, well, what's the full innovation strategy over multiple different stages? What's regenerative product like? What's new materials that we could do, biomimicry? Then there was things like, well, how do we do go to market with our customers and consumers? And so before you knew it, I was with the brand probably, maybe 13 years or something. Yeah. And then right at the end of that time, so this was, I guess, 2019, in 2020, I had just started to get this feeling like we had done so much good work at actually trying to get people to see sustainability as innovative and desirable and just better, more exciting. I don't think everybody remembers what it was like back in 2004. So when sustainability felt still a bit crunchy, it was sort of a sacrifice
Yeah,
where, well,
sacrifice.
you would
Yeah.
trade off. And it seemed like the world had finally caught up to where I was hoping it would be. Consumers are voters with dollars. So I was hoping that they would pull that demand for sustainability through in the products. And that's what I was seeing by 2019. But uh, it felt like we had sort of tapped out in this levels of decarbonization we could do by consumer demand alone. And the sort of deep decarbonization that we needed, but through, industrial changes, energy transition, that was really a systems and infrastructure problem that it didn't feel like I could influence from where I was. And I was getting more and more interested in infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that at that point in time, Arcadis was searching for its first chief sustainability officer. And they reached out to me, and I was very excited to make that transition. And so I did in 2020. Arcadis, for those who don't know, is a Dutch global design and engineering company, works in all areas like energy, water, mobility, industrial and commercial real estate, buildings, all of these topics. And so I came in to help build the program, to create the program, grow the team, start developing programs on how we would teach and upskill our engineers across the company on the broad breadth of topics across sustainability. We had deep vertical experts who knew, water systems in and out, but perhaps not the full breadth of what we're talking about in sustainability. And they needed that in order to talk to our customers and our clients. And then other things like having our own net zero plan. And we wound up committing to a really strong one where actually we commit to reaching net zero by 2035, which was really quite aggressive. And also, what I was most excited about was actually the work we did with the global business areas and co-creating together plans of what are the sustainable solutions that are going to be the business drivers, the growth drivers, and that are going to help our clients solve their infrastructure problems. Mm-hmm. Things like net zero buildings and energy transition solutions and these sort of things. And so actually figuring out what the business units needed to do and to be able to actually bring all these things forward. And as I was doing a lot more of this work with, getting to know clients and getting to know more about these solutions, I got really close to a lot of the new climate tech solutions that are emerging. Really exciting stuff. And batteries and storage, heat batteries are an obsession of mine at the moment, where actually you can replace natural gas power in a facility, in a factory, with these new heat batteries. Then there's other solutions that are really exciting that I'd love to talk more about, but maybe just to wrap up. So this has become something that I've gotten really, really excited about, both the climate tech VCs funding them and the companies themselves. And so I guess maybe a little bit of news. As of this September, I am no longer with Arcadis. I am taking a little time to do a deeper dive into these very specific solutions. And I plan to go forward either on the VC or on the company side, the scale up side, in the next step. So yeah.
What I find really interesting about your career, you come to a certain point and then you discover something and you say, oh, I need to do something here. And then you build on this one, you invest time, and, out of 2 years became 13 years. And then you said, oh, I want to deep dive. And I think it sounds interesting that you're kind of not creating your roles, but you're paving your career as you're walking through it. Is this somehow true?
Yeah, I mentor a lot of people who are interested in coming into the field or who are just starting out. And more often than not, like sometimes the intro question is like, how can I get your job? Or how can I do what you did?
Mhm.
And the reality was my job didn't exist before I got there in basically any job that I've had thus far. And it's more seeing the sort of need of what needs to get done, what's missing. And the thing that gets me really excited and jazzed is about how are we going to create impact? How are we going to turn this big ship when it comes to climate change and actually get to a much better, just all around better world and economy? And this, you know, because nobody had that job before, or we were never at this place before in the economy, there was never these roles. And so each time you got to kind of describe and work it out and figure it out and say, put your hand up. I'll be okay with doing that. And then sure enough, you got a job.
So your curiosity leads you to solving problems which didn't exist earlier. I mean, let's be honest, this sustainability topic, decades ago, we didn't think about this, yeah? Then all of a sudden we started talking about recycled polyester. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the greatest hit, when we really started working on this one. And then we were asking ourselves the question, do the people pay more for this one? Yeah, this was completely the wrong question, but this was one of the questions which we were faced with in the beginning, isn't it? Because the costs were so much higher, and it has changed. The costs have adjusted because the demand got bigger. Yeah. So with the changes in the world, the job changed. Yeah. So, and it's curiosity which has led you to.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, I'm most effective and I work the hardest when I'm really interested in the problem that seems to, I can't figure out why it hasn't been fixed yet. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been, the only reason I'm able to do these kinds of jobs is because of the foundations that were there before I got there. And so I'm not the only person that has been doing this sort of thing. I mean, there were people who were establishing the basics of like, how do we monitor our supply chain for the human rights topics or labor topics? Or compliance on our chemicals. Like these things needed to be there and were there because people also saw that need and crafted, a solution for them. I was able to build on that and say, well, the products that we have should also not only themselves be more sustainable in terms of actually measurably, in the right way. You actually have measured this is the least impact materials you could use. This is the most optimized way you could do it, but also carry stories and messages of innovation and excitement such that people actually want it more. When you were saying before, it cost a lot more. People may forget in 2004, there were hardly any EVs in the US. There were a few, very small. There was no Tesla Roadster. There was nobody thought of an EV as a red sports car. But then actually you can create a product that captures the imagination of what the possibilities are. And then the demand grows. And then the possibilities for all the different EV companies that are now in there coming in can just grow and expand. And now, if you look at charts from the International Energy Agency, we're at such a tipping point already now that this has already achieved liftoff. We are going to fully switch over to electric transportation. China this year, 50% of the new cars were EVs. So, this is what happens if you make it appealing enough for people to want to join.
You're so right. I bought my electric car, I think 8 or 9 years ago, and I was really one of the first ones. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many questions, why do you do this? Da, 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 da. And now when I drive into our parking spot,
Yeah.
there's, a whole floor of
Yeah.
charging stations.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting when you see this evolution, and make it
Mm-hmm.
part of your role. When we think back about your career, Alexis, is there an advice you would give your younger self when, setting out to build your career or start into this professional life? What advice would you give to yourself?
Well, I learned a couple lessons along the way, so I could go into those later if you like. But if I was giving myself some advice, one of the most helpful things was to constantly seek out mentors and people who could tell me about. I was constantly talking to people, even though it wasn't sort of my day job, about like, well, what's this other thing that you do? And that actually gave me such help and support of this wider network, opening my eyes to other possibilities that were there. It also helped support me at the times when, doing a job that it doesn't already have a precedent can sometimes be really frustrating or, really stymieing. And then having that kind of mentorship and support was huge. So I'm glad that came through. If I were to give myself some advice, I like my life now, so I don't really want to do too much different. I just would sort of counsel myself that you think a career is kind of a straight line, and actually it's a straight line when you look backwards. You
I
see
like
the
it.
red thread all the way through it.
Yeah.
But don't assume, therefore, that you won't be able to do like some other sectors or some other roles or something is off base for you. Like, who would have thought that somebody who spent so many years, 13 years, 15 years in sneakers would wind up going on over to energy and buildings? And it was, luckily enough, I had a wonderful CEO. I joined Arcadis with Peter Osterveer, who was the CEO at the time. And we talked about, what I had hoped for the company. And so he said, oh, great. Well, since you've done all these things, that's exactly what we need for Arcadis. And when I came in and actually started doing the job, I realized that actually 90% of the job was directly transferable. And the other 10% was really exciting to learn. So maybe just not be so scared of it might look like a big shift on the outside, but there's actually more commonality and more possibility to do it. What you need, though, to do that is you need to be building that broader network, that constantly learning about other things, so that you kind of build up. You need like a running head start to do that kind of jump. And usually it winds up coming from, like, at least my track record seems to be like a year or a year and a half before I start getting an itch. And I'm really curious about something. I'm really learning about something. And then all of a sudden, after talking to all these people, something kind of comes together. And then it's a switch again.
You have been a very active networker, as far as I remember. Yeah? I mean, you joined a lot of meetings, and you were really looking. I was working in costing when you joined, and we had very, very, very deep discussions on, how to account the costs, how to and you were really, really interested in the details. Is this part of your secret sauce for your success?
Yeah, I think I'm an utter nerd. I always was. Like, actually, when I was little, I would take a stack in the library in the kids' room, and they had this big gorilla, like Coco the gorilla, that you could sit with. And then I would just kind of work through the books, like one by one by one. And so, I can get bored when I'm not learning. And so it's actually a sort of useful way of, it helps me in the job that I'm doing, but it also keeps me engaged and interested, because usually I'm bothered by a question. So, for example, I couldn't figure out why people just wouldn't see where the direction of the market and differentiation was when it came to sustainable product. And I just wanted to know all the details about Okay, well, what's getting in the way of it? And, I needed people like you to be able to sit with me and have the patience and the time to answer all my questions. But
You
the
know,
good thing about answering the questions is that then you get into a conversation with somebody and then they'll talk to you again when you come back.
I really enjoyed this because it helped me to see something else because I was learning something as well. So in the moment I answered your questions, you helped me to see a different world and understand, how my work could, contribute to a different picture. So I really, really enjoyed this
Oh, I'm so
approach.
glad.
So just, I'm not sure if I ever told you, but for me, this was really like, wow, yeah, because sometimes you're getting so in your world. And then if someone is, helping you to understand something outside, I really enjoyed it. And when you were presenting yourself, you said you come from a medical family. I do as well. My mom is a
Ah,
dentist, and I was growing up with all these colorful books of diseases you could have in your mouth.
yeah,
I liked them as a kid. I
yeah,
really, really,
yeah.
I was absorbing this one. I didn't study this one because I thought I can't distance myself from the patients
Yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
so. And funnily enough, now I'm a coach. Yeah, so I'm
yeah, yeah.
supporting
So you got
women
pretty
differently.
clever. Yeah.
So it's coming back in circles. You care about the mother nature. This is how you take care and take responsibility. Alexis, what is for you fulfillment? What is for your satisfaction? What are you getting out of your job?
Huh. Well, you said something really interesting before. You said, I'm about Mother Nature, and I guess yes, that's true. That's a part of it. But there's a phrase that's going around like, "We need to save the world," or there's like, "You're saving the world," and I'm like, "We're not saving the world. We're saving ourselves."
Mm.
And because actually, I hate to say it, but if we blow up the planet and, completely overshoot and everything, we're going to die out or we're going to have a miserable life. And the planet will keep going in a different way, but Mother Nature will keep going. We're hurting ourselves. And so the stuff that I first got at the international development, the thing that got me into it is I actually really want people to just live better, like live in societies better. And I define better on multiple fronts. It's, you know, more health, more wealth, more leisure, more community, more nature, all of these things. But one of the things I noticed when I was doing international development is I think I'm less excited when I do it on a very micro level, and I'm more interested in sort of the macro systems
Mm.
level. And that's sort of when my intellectual curiosity gets jogged or captured. And so that ultimately was a helpful switch in when I moved over. But I'll tell you one thing, which is I don't know if this is a great story or not, but ultimately
Let's
I
see
was
it.
in my hammock in rural northern Nicaragua. And I was so frustrated by what I was seeing, these sort of systemic problems. And I happened to read a Newsweek article about Greenpeace activists going back and getting their MBAs and how they were able to then speak the language of business and be
Wow.
able to work on both sides. And there's a part in me and my personality, this because we've worked together. I'm like a fighter, I want to push on something. So I was like, Greenpeace activist, that's great. I can do that. And so I'll be a Greenpeace activist in a suit. And that's sort of what, kept me going. That's got a little of the fire there.
That's an interesting picture. But what I'm hearing is that your personal values and how you translate them to your job, they're matching 100%, isn't it?
I think if you're lucky enough, and not everybody is. So when you are lucky enough to actually pick your profession or not worry about sort of a subsistence level of, I just need to do what I need to do to take care of my family, then I hope it doesn't sound too preachy to say, like, I feel like it's almost incumbent on you then to figure out how your job is your day job, the thing that gives you your sustenance, is actually going to make people's lives around you better.
Mm.
And, you could do it on the micro level. You could do it through medicine, through coaching, through whatever it is.
Mm.
Or you could do it on a macro level, at the systems level. Like, there's so many sectors that need to transform. Go in there and find a way to do it. But I just feel like if you have the luxury of getting the choice, then go find the one that you can be motivated about and then go push for it. Don't just kind of ride along with the status quo.
Okay, so challenge the stuff, challenge the environment to get what you really want to, get the energy out of the work.
Yeah. And there's a lot of studies that say, like, when you're doing something that gives back to other people, or that gives back to some bigger cause, it's actually very effectively selfish because you
I
know you're you're doing something good for other people, but the real reward you wind up getting is it's fun and you feel good. And so I think there's a really great case for, if you get to choose, why wouldn't you choose this?
I like it. I like it. Being the first, and running against closed doors, maybe they have not been open. How
Yeah.
did you experience this in your career as a female leader, female leader in a new field? Is there something you can share about this one? Was it always easy peasy and they're like, hey, welcome, do, or how did,
No, and that's really humbling because I realize that I have so many other privileges, and that one of the only things that actually wasn't already an advantage was I had a different gender than most of the people in leadership. There's other people that have, like, backgrounds or ethnicities or sexuality or something, that multiple aspects that are also more challenging. So I can't even imagine when it was that challenging for me, what it's like for others. That being said, I did notice, or it was really hard sometimes to differentiate between when is feedback being given to me because that's actual true feedback that is needed, and when is it like overweighted.
Mhm.
There's a recent study that I heard about. I think it was recently brought out in Fortune. The magazine published it. I'll go find it for you, and maybe we can put a link to it. But it was that actually from high performing women versus high performing men. What happens in reviews?
Mhm.
75% of the time, high performing women uh, get non-actionable feedback and negative feedback on the social front.
Mhm.
Oh, either you're a joy to work with, or so and so has trouble with you, or da da da. Whereas it's not about the skills, it's not about the job, the thing. Whereas that's really only the case for about, I think it was 5% of men.
Mhm.
And so it's always really tough because I think you need to look a lot and hard at yourself to say, like, what could I be doing better all the time? But then trying to disentangle that, tease that out from then, okay, but when is this sort of like overweighted in one way? It requires you to get a lot of perhaps support, good friends, good mentors, good coaches who can help you differentiate between that and
Yeah.
keep growing.
And I think that the difficult thing is you don't know that it's different between men and women because you're in your gender, yeah. So,
Yeah.
alone this fact to understand that, hey, I need to ask for feedback on the contribution I'm making. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's put this other stuff away and say, okay, I hear that you're telling me I'm too harsh, yeah. But let's talk about the impact. Do I get the results? Do you want me, to shift the conversation, to have the mental shift as well, to put aside this emotional crap, yeah. This, like, we expect women to be always nice. We talk
Yeah.
about business, yeah. I mean, it's about delivering something. I think this study, and let's find the link, Alexis, and link it to the show notes.
Yeah.
It's so important to realize this one, isn't it?
Yeah. And I can't even imagine, there are other firsts that are so much harder than the first that I went through. So again, I think it's just important to have heard this, or to hear this from other people, to give you more resilience, because that's frankly all you need. If you're going to go an unusual path, if you're going to create your own job, you're just going to need to have a bit of a thick skin and, here, take every piece of feedback as a gift, which is literally it's a gift. They didn't have to give it to you. But then you can choose, just like you do at Christmas. Sometimes you want to wear that sweater and sometimes you don't.
Exactly.
Or maybe you trade it in for something else. So you don't have to, you can bounce back from those things. And you can also say, well, what makes sense to me? What feels right to me? And then use that to improve you getting better in the places that you really care about.
Is this the advice you would give women in leadership roles?
Completely. And go find each other. Because I can't even tell you that, like, the amount of help that it is, my network of friends and other women executives or other executives in the sustainability field, whatever, any of these categories, these subcategories, go find your people out there, because if you're toiling away at something, it can help so much just to know that there's a net, in German you would say, a network of all these people around the world doing the same thing, so you're not alone. Yeah, that helps me bounce.
That's a cool advice. So if someone wants to start their careers in sustainability, how should they start?
The first thing is, sustainability is not one thing.
And ESG is even bigger. What do you really want to do? Yeah.
Some people call it sustainability. Some people call it ESG. Some people call it corporate responsibility. Some people, and then that, is only defining within a corporate sphere some of these tasks and field of what gets done. If you're actually talking about creating impact, for example, the kind of impact that I want to do, then you can say, well, that's certainly not limited to the corporate responsibility space.
Yeah.
That's also developing new technologies, climate tech technologies. That's maybe providing sustainable investment that funds many of these things. So I would say, first, figure out what you care about a lot. And a lot of people who I come and mentor or have mentoring calls with, they're like, well, I don't know how to figure out what I'm interested in. It's like, well, what's the thing that you don't fall asleep when you're doing it? Like, if you had to be reading this article or listening to this podcast right before bed, what's the one that you don't fall asleep with? And that was actually from my own experience in my MBA. I was convinced I was going to go into renewable energy finance because I thought the concept of it was so cool. And the problem was, every time I was doing my homework right before bed, I started falling asleep. And then it was like, oh, well, okay, I managed to make it. I managed to make it through the course, but I was pretty clear. It's like, oh, I better rethink that, because like I couldn't stay awake. And it's the thing that you just get a little bit obsessed with. Like, I listen to podcasts. My podcast list is crazy. But right now, I'm completely obsessed with these energy transition, industrial decarbonization, new climate topics. And you do it in your free time, So you should find that thing that you want to be doing even in your free time. And then talk to as many people as you can possibly get in touch with. And thank God for LinkedIn. Like, literally, there are people around the world who will happily talk to you.
Yeah.
There's even networks that have started now, and I can provide a couple links for folks if they want. There's a bunch of different ones that help people who are not in climate, for example, if that's your thing, get into climate related jobs. And it is just a more organized form of this thing that I sort of have done on my own, which is the networking that brings you to someone. And it's always somebody brings you to somebody, brings you to somebody, brings you to somebody. It's almost like you talk to the universe and then the universe talks back. And it just pops
networking
up after a while. Yeah.
Networking is the key to success, or the key to clarity, maybe, to where to get started, isn't it?
Yeah. And you do not need to know what that job is, or you do not even need to, you just need a hypothesis. I'm interested in this thing, and I kind of think I would more want to do something like this, and it will change over each conversation. So all
Exactly.
you do is go into these conversations with a hypothesis. I hear a lot. So I'm American. I'm married to a German engineer. And I see this all the time in Germany is people feel like they need to know precisely
Yeah,
the thing
that's
before
ingrained
it
in
has to be
the culture.
perfect. No, all you need is a hypothesis to get going.
How do you balance your very busy life with your private life? What is your, because some people are worried to go into leadership roles because they
Yeah.
think, they need to give up their family life, they can't enjoy, what's your advice? What is your learning you want to share there?
I read one thing before I had kids, and now that I do have kids, I have a 4 and a 7-year-old. Um, that Sheryl Sandberg wrote in the Lean In book. She was like, say yes to the job, and then you can always decide later you don't want to do it anymore.
Exactly.
And so it's also true. And there are some companies, there's some regions that are perhaps even better than others, but I truly believe you can shape this no matter where you are. Is you go find the thing that you're interested in, even if that role, that opportunity, that thing scares you at the beginning. Almost every new role I've taken has scared the pants off me. And you say yes, and you jump in, and all you need to be sure of, which I am pretty clear about, is I define my boundaries pretty clearly up front. I say, I'm going to give you my everything, my absolutely everything. I work really hard, but I have a 4 and a 7-year-old, and I will need to protect time for putting them to bed and having dinner with them.
Yeah.
And that means I can't travel 3 days out of every single week. I have boundaries that I've defined, and then I just let people know that up front. And if that means you don't get that job, so what?
Then
The
it's
other
not
one,
enough.
like 3
Exactly.
phone calls later, you're going to get one that will meet those boundaries. It's
Exactly.
never been a problem for me.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you. I think you need to be clear about what you want
yeah,
and then be able to communicate it. And if your employer doesn't accept it, it's not the right employer.
yeah, yeah.
Sounds easy. It's not always easy. But once you start thinking in this concept, you become more clear in saying no to the right stuff and yes to the right stuff.
Completely true. One other thing that maybe I could say this to you as a fellow mom, I'm really lucky at pick the right partner, because I
Oh, yeah.
have a partner who fully we both work full time. We fully split and share everything. And in fact, he cooks much better than I do. So there's if I didn't pick the right person in the beginning,
Yeah.
then maybe there would be an imbalance of too much that I couldn't juggle. But because we're sharing the juggling fully, then actually, yeah, sometimes it's a little more on me, sometimes it's a little more on him, but it balances.
Yeah.
So it's really not a problem.
No, I think this is the first thing, when you want to have a career, you discuss it with your partner upfront. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
same with the employer, check if it's, according to what you want to have. You do the same with the
Yeah.
person, your partner you're closest with. Yeah. I mean, if you don't do
Yeah.
this, yeah, that's wise words. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, take care who you choose as a partner for your life.
Somebody said, I don't remember who said it, but it was the single, and it was not a typical person. It wasn't a woman who said this. They said the single most important decision you make in your life is who your partner will be.
Yeah. For everything.
Um, yeah.
Everything. For everything. Yeah.
And whoever that is, and whatever you choose to do in your partnership, you would think it was like where you pick which role and which you can always shape these things, but yeah, make sure that you guys are aligned.
In values. In order to close our discussion right now, if I would ask you to choose one word which describes you. What is this word? Or maybe an object.
I can tell you the word that's been told to me in both very positive and very negative tones over the time. So I seem to have earned that word, perhaps, which is I'm really passionate.
Passion.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit the good news is it can be infectious. I can,
Yeah.
really pull people along. I can talk to clients. I can, describe topics. I can describe a vision. I can get people to want to buy into it. That being said, yeah, that means I burn pretty hot. And so, people who just kind of want to be like, work on this one thing and let it go, I'm still talking.
I think
So,
you need to have passion when you are starting this role, which you shape the roles, yeah. You have not been shaped by the roles, you shape the roles and the organizations. Alexis, it was so great to meet you again. And we check in from time to time. We
yeah,
met, during holidays, remember in France?
I remember. I
It was
remember
so
that.
funny. Like, I know her, And my husband,
The world
you
is
know more
small.
than the world, yeah.
The world is small. Yeah, and that's also the other nice thing about when you have this network of folks that you talk to and people that you bring close to you, you bump into each other in the darndest of places. So it really does feel like the world is small and people are close.
Yeah, and you need to get close to people. Alexis, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to meet you wherever on Earth again, in what
Yes.
position. Let's stay connected. And for the show notes, we will be linking all the information, and we try to find the studies because I
Mm.
think it's super important, because receiving feedback is something which helps you to grow in the career and in your private life. So every feedback should be something to help you grow, and you need to ensure that you're getting the right feedback, isn't it?
Yeah, so
Thank
true.
you so much for your passion, the passion for the podcast and the passion for the subject. And you got this. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me today. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. For more inspiration and leadership tips, follow me on LinkedIn. You'll find the link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe so you can stay on track with every new episode. Let's continue this journey of growth together. You've got this. I'm Katharina Engelhardt, the host of the You Got This podcast.